today to attend to the district conference, somewhat different, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So we've had a good morning of speakers. I think we've all thoroughly enjoyed this afternoon, early part of the afternoon speakers. So we'll be moving on now. Let me see. Okay. Our first speaker of the second session is David Duke MBE. David is the founder and CEO of Street Soccer Scotland. David was homeless in 2003, but just 6 years later, he had started Street Soccer Scotland and was rubbing shoulders with the footballing luminaries like Sir Alex Ferguson, who is an ambassador for the organisation. David works closely with government, athletes, charities, social enterprise, and some of Scotland's leading entrepreneurs, all with the aim of improving the lives of those who face some of society's biggest challenges. David has experienced firsthand the problems that face the people that his organisation works with and helps daily. He has lived it, homelessness, addiction and mental illness, and he has been there. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce David Dukes.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
I hope you're all doing well. It's great to kind of speak. I think the last time I spoke at a Rotary event was a few years ago, and I always enjoy them, and it's always really inspiring to see the work of the volunteers within Rotary and the impact they're having, not just here in Scotland, but further afield, you know, and it's never been more needed. You know, the impact on COVID has been, you know, you couldn't imagine it, you know, in terms of the way we live our lives now and the impact it's had on a lot of society, you know, especially those who are kind of at the most vulnerable. And as I say, things like the Rotary are really important to kind of help kind of create better when we move beyond it. And it's been a rough year for everyone, so hope you're all keeping safe and well. So Street Soccer Scotland is a social enterprise and charity which was set up in 2009, and the purpose of it was to use football as a kind of tool and a carrot to kind of bring people together. You know, there's a lot of the people we support, you know, often experience things like homelessness, mental health, maybe coming through addiction and so on. And it can be quite isolating and quite lonely, you know, and often people are cut off from some of the things that we all take for granted in life, such as relationships and support and role models, you know. So but the story behind it, you know, like most charities and organisations, there's normally a story behind why it exists, and it's normally based on someone's passion or their own experiences, you know, and mine was probably both. Back in, as you mentioned earlier, you know, I spent 3 years homeless in Glasgow, and you know, it didn't just happen overnight. You know, I grew up, you know, as a child, I lived in a kind of lone parent, my late teens, I lived in a kind of lone parent household, and my dad was an alcoholic, and I dropped out of school at 13. And I was just on this pathway where I never really had, because I left school at 13, you know, I couldn't get into education and training once I hit 16, and I just kind of floated around. But, you know, I had a close bond with my father. You know, I spent quite a lot of time at home with him, and when he passed away, it hit me really hard. And, you know, as a young guy, you know, unwilling to open up about feelings, I just kind of blocked it all out and cut myself off from people, trying to pretend it wasn't happening. I kind of moved away. I grew up in Govan, in Glasgow, but I kind of moved away and started working in the south side of Glasgow, and just almost kind of lifted my life from Govan and tried to move it elsewhere, thinking that all my problems would disappear. But, you know, I was working in a bar at the time, and I was just kind of looking for an escape. You know, I was drinking all the time. I said, disconnected myself from family and friends back home because I didn't want to be part of the grieving process. And you know, when you're drinking all the time and you're not kind of turning up at work, then you lose your job, and then you lose your house. And then I became homeless. You know, I think it was 2021 at the time. You know, you're not trained at school in terms of how to react to becoming homeless, so you just kind of follow a path, and you know, spent a lot of time on the street, and then in all the kind of hostels, which were kind of run by the Glasgow City Council at the time. You know, very depressing places, you know, with little support for the people who live there. And because I was a young person, I managed to get into a supported accommodation, which allowed me to have my own space. And, you know, albeit I was still homeless, but I had my own space. And I had a support worker, you know, I had someone who could kind of talk through some of the stuff that I'd experienced, some of the trauma I experienced, and try to kind of come up with solutions. But, you know, the big thing that kind of changed for me was when I seen a poster advertising a football tournament. You know, football was a big part of my life growing up in Govan, you know, played as captain of the school teams and all that. And it was something that I was always, wouldn't say good at it, but I was passionate about it. You know, I reconnected with football for the first time in probably about 8 years, and I got involved in this football tournament, which was being run by the Big Issue magazine, and that was to find a football team to go and play, represent Scotland in the Homeless World Cup, which was taking place in Sweden. So I went down to the trials, got involved, you know, and suddenly I was surrounded by positive influence in terms of my coaches and you know, the support workers there. And just to kind of, you know, set the scene, you know, I was before the football started, I was waking up having nowhere to go, nothing to do. And I was living in a building with 32 other young people who had all their own stuff going on, you know, and you know, when you've got nothing to do and you've not got any purpose or kind of focus, you know, you just get involved in anything and everything, you know, whether it be drinking, smoking hash, whatever it was, you know, you were just kind of getting involved in stuff, basically to pass the time. But what the football offered me was a way out of that, you know, and it surrounded me in an environment where I had something to focus on. So the tournament was kind of coming up in 3 months' time, and suddenly I had a training session on a Tuesday and a Thursday to look forward to. You know, I'd kind of, so you wouldn't be drinking the night before because you wanted to be fresh for football. After football, you know, you wouldn't be getting involved in anything that would kind of hinder your performance on the pitch, because I was still trying to get into the team at this point. And you know, that structure and that purpose and something to wake up for kind of always stuck with me. It was always very important. Playing at the Homeless World Cup was fantastic, life changing, you know, but just as important was that build up to the World Cup where I suddenly had something to wake up for, you know, and that was really important. So I went to the World Cup, came back, as I say, had a great experience. And then I was at this kind of crossroads again, because I had this kind of, I'd built, you know, I had some structure, I was more confident, I was more healthy. But then the World Cup came and went, and I was kind of back to where I was because the football would stop, because that was this was only for the actual tournament. You know, the football was only aimed at the tournament. And my support worker, Alice, she got me involved in volunteering, which allowed me to continue being involved with football, but most importantly, it allowed me to get out of the hostel 3 nights a week to go and coach. And it gave me a bit of responsibility. You know, I was coaching kids aged 12, 13. And for the first time ever, I'd kind of had a wee bit of self-worth, you know, and like the kids and the parents seen me as a role model to the young people. So that made me think about how I behaved. It made me think about, you know, the people that I kept company with, because, you know, if I went with certain people, I'd be kind of put in a wee bit of danger. Whereas, so I was kind of mindful in terms of this was my chance, and I just kind of took it. Moved out of the hostel, moved into my own home, went back into I say I left school at 13, but I was really inspired by kind of working with young people and just volunteering and all that. So I went and did a qualification at college in community work, and that led to full-time employment with the Big Issue Foundation. And then for the next couple of years, you know, I was just kind of working full-time, supporting people who were homeless, doing youth work at night and kind of casting out the Gorbals and so on, using football as a kind of tool. And then in kind of 2009, I just thought, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to do more with football. And because I'd seen people that I grew up with in the hostels still kicking about the town in Glasgow, you know, still in need of support. And I just thought, you know, not everyone can go and play at the World Cup, but certainly everybody can be involved in a football programme. You know, we can set these up and we can make them local so people can access them. So yeah, so I kind of quit my job. I got a £3,000 loan startup grant from kind of First Port, this kind of social enterprise startup. And I basically just bought a bag of footballs, a second-hand laptop, got my pals to design a logo for me. Spent most of the money on lawyers' fees trying to get the bloody organisation set up, which I'll never do again. And away I went, you know, and I just, you know, started making partnerships, started kind of, you know, going around the hostels, day centres, you know, speaking to the rehabs, just saying, look, we're putting these football sessions on, and the players started to come, you know, it started to become really busy. And at the time I was kind of working part-time just to kind of pay the rent type thing. And it was just so busy I couldn't kind of cope. So I actually started looking at the players who were coming around and started to identify leaders within the group, and then started putting them through their coaching badges and sending them to college so that they could then start delivering the sessions and allow me to try and focus on creating a kind of sustainable model for the organisation. So that was in 2009, and as I said, why we did it was simply that we all need something to be part of, you know, whether it's a workplace, a family, you know, a football club, a social club, you know, we rely on it. And I think often when I kind of tell people about what we do and why it works, it's quite hard for people to understand it. But I think, you know, what COVID's done in terms of, it's made us all pretty isolated, and it's cut us, you know, people are isolated, people are more financially insecure as a result of COVID. You know, you can't go to cinemas, you can't go to restaurants, you know. But a lot of this stuff was normal for a lot of people that we support before COVID, you know. So I think, you know, it's really important. People's really important in people's journey, you know, relationships. Relationships gets you through tough times. Even my own story, you know, I was cut off with everybody. But see if I'd still maintained some sort of relationships with some of my family and stuff, I might have got through it. I might not have had to spend kind of 3 years homeless. And so we just feel that in terms of for people to kind of develop and grow, you know, relationships has to be part of that, and people just need to be part of something. So football was our method, you know, but you know, although we're called street soccer, you know, we're probably 20% football and 80% kind of support and advocacy and many other things. So, you know, today kind of we run a number of programs across Scotland, you know, from our original kind of drop-in sessions, which is basically, you know, multiple sites across Scotland where people can come along, men and women can play for free, you know, there's no questions asked. We don't say, oh, are you homeless or have you got mental health? We don't ask any questions like that. We just ask them for their name and if they get an emergency contact number, because, you know, a lot of players that we support are constantly having to justify getting access to some sort of support. And we don't want to be a support service. We just want to be a community for them. So when people come in, you know, we just allow trust to be built and people develop. And then we've got a whole range of other things such as personal development programs. We've got volunteer programs. We've got an employability partnership with Working Right for people who are ready to kind of step into work or get the confidence to step into work. We've got a prison program, a women's program, and we also represent Scotland at the Homeless World Cup, which sadly didn't go ahead due to COVID last year and won't go ahead this year. But, you know, hopefully we can get that back for 2022. So, you know, that's the type of programs we run, and you know, there's many a story in terms of how it's helped. But you know, one of the words that comes out a lot when we speak to players is kind of, it's like a second family, you know, and we're kind of there for them, and we're very passionate about, you know, you'll see a lot of funded projects, which is a 12-week project here, 10-week project there, and you know, we try and avoid that kind of stuff because we want to be there for the long term for people, you know. And it's almost like because sometimes people will access some of the services and then move on, but then something might happen and they might need a wee bit more support again. And if we're not there, then that person's lost to the system again, or just kind of lost. And it's important to create that kind of, not a safety net, but more of a safety trampoline so they can bounce in and out, you know, in terms of when they need us. COVID, you know, COVID has had a massive impact on charities. You know, there's Ashley, I know Ashley's on here just now as well, and you know, it's impacted us all, you know. And you know, back at last March, you know, we set an organisation up to bring people together, and COVID meant we could do the exact opposite, you know. So we just, as a kind of as a leader of the organisation, we just had to make sure that we were kind of still there for players, you know. And although the football wasn't there, the support maintained, you know, whether it be food, data, mobile phones, you know, emergency transport for medications, one-to-one walk and talks, online sessions. So we just tried to kind of make sure that we were flexible enough to make sure that, you know, the support was still there. As I say, the football is just the front cover of what we do. And, you know, it's important that we're kind of able to offer other things as well. So COVID was massive, but again, you know, you need to, you know, I think I never really had a problem with the COVID side of things in terms of, because I've been dealing with crisis since I was like 5-year-old. So it's kind of normality to kind of having to pivot and stuff like that. But mental health is something that's always ran through everything that we do. And, you know, you can't underestimate the impact that this is having on people's mental health, you know, and it's, and that's everyone, you know, it's not just, you know, people who are living in poverty, it's affecting everyone. And I think, you know, see, we've always tried to make sure that one of our kind of key priorities is mental health within the organisation. And when you look at our impact and our data, you know, our strongest indicators is all around wellbeing and mental health in terms of our performance, in terms of the impact of street soccer on players. But we need to do more, you know, and over the next couple of years, we're going to be really kind of challenging government and other authorities to kind of do more, because there's just not enough. You know, there's lots of adverts and there's lots of kind of phone lines when you're at crisis point. But there needs to be something before crisis point that keeps people healthy and supports people's mental well-being, and builds kind of mental toughness as well. And my own experience, I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor, but people and activity is a big kind of help. You know, it's a safe place. You feel, you know, anyone, I'm speaking from experience as well, when you've got mental health, it tells you to avoid people. You know, it tells you to isolate yourself, and it tells you to hide away. But the safest place you can be is around people, because you can talk, and talking is one of the best therapies you can ever get, because once you let it out, it makes sense. Whereas when it's in the back of your head, it doesn't make sense. And I just think, you know, we need to really kind of put pressure, you know, because it's fine. You know, it's great that we're talking about it more, and it's really important that we do. And it's great that we've got those kind of crisis helplines, but we need to invest before that as well, because if we don't, it's just going to be unmanageable, you know. And you can see the pressures, especially in young people who grew up, who are growing up in a digital world, where they're constantly, you know, kind of comparing themselves to others and things that basically aren't real, you know. And we need to make sure there's a place for young people to develop. Young people are being more and more isolated every day because of technology, you know. And if you look at the impact of COVID as well, you know, half of the leisure facilities in Glasgow won't reopen, you know. So at a time when we need more and more places for people to come together, we're shutting them down. You know, we're building houses on spaces that communities can come together, and it's wrong, and we need to stop it, and we need to do what we can. So, you know, mental health is a big part of what we do, and we'll constantly do that. And as we look to the future, it's about trying to, you know, like anyone, and again, Ashley will kind of probably agree, you know, it's about how do you keep going? You know, how do you keep the wheels moving? How do you become sustainable for the charity? And I think, you know, times are changing. You always need to try and think of new ways to kind of support people and change and stuff like that, and new income streams. You know, for us, a big part of our income's always been corporate. You know, it's corporate sponsorship, corporate events, and you know, that's basically going to be dead for the next 2 years. So we're now having to. I think we're currently got a football being dribbled from Aberdeen to Glasgow this weekend. And why I'm so tired is I had to do the night shift last night, so I was dribbling it through the dark fields of Fife at 3 o'clock this morning. But you know, looking at different ways to engage your fans and supporters to kind of to get behind you, you know. And we've got a couple of new developments that started. So we've launched in London. We've got Street Soccer London running now, which is going really well. With a big focus on kind of youth at risk of being involved in gangs and nurtured into gangs. So we're building some street soccer communities in London. We're just about to open the Dugout in Ocean Terminal, which is a kind of hybrid of a retail space and a training space. And then we've just took over and finished for Dundee. I don't think they are, because this is the west of Scotland Rotary. But we've just taken on as I mentioned, a lot of the leisure facilities are not going to reopen. So we've just signed a partnership with the City Council in Dundee. So we're taking over the Change Centre, which is, well, it's going to be called the Change Centre, but it's an old sports centre, the Lynch Centre in Dundee, in the kind of Lochee ward. So we've just kind of put quite a big investment into that to repurpose it into a community facility, which will have football, will have sport, but it'll have a lot more. So we've created a partners hub as well, so local organisations can use the facility for free and you know, serve that community. So, well, although COVID's been a bit of a pain in the backside, it's you know, we need to remember that there's a lot of people who's lost their lives from it, and you know, and it's kind of impacted mostly. But it's important not to let it overcome you. And there's always, I believe, when the dark times are there's always good that can come out it. You know, every cloud is a silver lining, as they say. So, you know, there is new things that will come out it which are for the good, for the greater good. And I firmly believe that. So yeah, that's. I'm trying to time it well, Angela. I'm just kind of keeping an eye on time there, so I don't, because I'll talk for Scotland and I'll just keep going. So I think I'm just around the time mark, and I'll leave. If anybody's got any questions, happy to fire away.
You're all right at the moment. I think, hang on, yeah, you've got another 5 minutes or so. If you, there's a question there, if you want to take a question, or do you want to carry on as you are?
Let's see. Yeah, so Douglas, is there an upper age range for the people you're involved with? No. So we've got, you know, I was actually just speaking, I was with one of our female players who's in her kind of late 50s, you know, yesterday. So we've got a kind of youth program, which is kind of 12 to 16, and then the majority of work's kind of adult. But, you know, we've got players in their 50s, you know. I think at some points we've had players early 60s. Who are faster than me still, and that's an absolute shocker. But yeah, we're open to, you know, we're open to kind of anyone, you know, and we try and not kind of put limits on who we can support. You know, if people come to us, then there's obviously a need. So like we kind of welcome everyone. Can you tell us about the prison service you mentioned? Yeah, so that was. We've not, sadly, because of the COVID, we've not actually been able to go in for the last year, but basically we've been working in 5 prisons, and you know, a lot of the players that we support often come through the criminal justice system, you know, and one of the big challenges, based on my experience and my kind of the people I'm friends with and all that, is, you know, when you get out, you know, you've not got many options. So you end up in the same position as you were, hanging about with the same stuff and looking for stuff to do. So that's one aspect of it. There's another aspect where when people are liberated, you know, they're kind of left to their own devices. Often it's on a Friday, so they can't even get, if they've got no fixed abode and they're trying to get accommodation for the night, often and they're starting to change it now, but you were getting liberated on a Friday, and then you have to navigate your way through the system to try and get help, you know. And we're making it easy for people to go back in, and actually we should making it really difficult for people to get back in, because we're putting enough support around them. So the program we do is a kind of 10-week program, and it's normally with people who are due for release. And what we do is we create a street soccer program within the prison. They do a qualification, one of their own qualifications, and then we maintain that relationship as they kind of transition back into outside the prison, basically. So we kind of build the relationship in there, and then we try and, you know, kind of maintain that relationship so that when they come out, you know, you're not just kind of left to your own devices. At least you've got something to do. You've got a wee bit of purpose. You've got a wee bit of structure, and that's how that goes. Great. Well, Andrew, how many people is your group working with each year, and how long do the folks stay working with you? So I'll probably go pre-COVID in terms of numbers. So we've got about 2,000 registered players. It's about kind of 1,200 adults, kind of 800 young people. How long do they stay? It just depends. You know, we've got guys that, I've got a guy who's been here since we started, but there's still been an impact. You know, he was homeless 20 years, real kind of challenges with his health and his mental health, you know, and he's unable to work because of that. You know, there's a lot of stuff that he can't do, so he can't, but he's been in a house for 8 years. You know, he's got his wee cat, he's got access to his daughter again, and he's an active volunteer for us, which for me, and he's happy. you know, and he's in a street soccer's his family, so we don't want to pressure people to go, because if that keeps them safe and that keeps them happy, then that's fine. But then the other side, we get guys and lasses who, you know, come through a program, maybe just out of rehab, and they use street soccer for maybe 6 to 12 months as part of their recovery journey, just to give them, you know, other stuff to do outside of the kind of the meetings and all that, and just give them that kind of structure and support. And then they move on and they go and do a training course and they get a job, and then they come back now and again for if they get a day off or something. But we don't put a time limit on it. You know, we're always creating opportunities for change. We're always encouraging people to kind of take that next step, you know, in terms of the confidence and all that into employment or whatever it is. But it's really hard to put a time limit on it.
Okay. Okay, David. Sorry.
And I've got no idea what the big dribble fundraising page is, but I'll send it to Andy later.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay. I remember you, David. The first time I met you was when I was at the Glasgow Business Club when we had you along. It was the Homeless World Cup in George Square in 2016, and that's when I first met you at the Glasgow Business Club when you were invited to lunch. It was Mel Young, I think, was president at the time. So
yeah, that's right.
That's my connection to you. So obviously a lot of work.
It feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.